From Idaho's News Channel 7, this is Viewpoint.
Welcome to this special Decision 2022 edition of Viewpoint. I'm Doug Petcash. Today we're focusing on the race for Idaho governor, specifically the three candidates running for the Republican nomination in the May 17th primary election. Governor Brad Little is running for a second term. Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin is hoping to unseat him, as is Ed Humphries. KTVB had planned to hold a debate among the three, but it was canceled after Governor Little declined to take part, and Lieutenant Governor McGeachin's campaign didn't get back to us by the deadline to schedule it. So, in lieu of that, I reached out to the candidates for interviews, and they all agreed to sit down with me. For fairness, I asked each of them the same general questions on a few of the big issues facing Idaho, including public education, taxes, and abortion. We start with Ed Humphries. He's a married father of two young children living in Eagle. He describes himself as a constitutional conservative and a patriot. Humphries is a financial advisor. He says he walked away from financial practice to focus on running for governor. Why are you running for governor?
The governor really has an immense ability to bring positive change to the state quickly because the governor has oversight over the state's budget. And if you change the way that you fund government, you will change the government itself. And I'm a finance guy. I think it's really powerful because if you want the truth in politics, you have to follow the money. And I know exactly what's going on in the state government. I think it's time for some change.
For this part of it, you can only name one, but what is your top priority and why?
School choice, no doubt. Families should have more educational options. And wherever the families want to enroll their children, I think the tax dollars should follow their kids to the school of their choice. This is really a powerful issue for everybody here in the state of Idaho. And not only will it alleviate some of the divisiveness and the contention that we're experiencing in our communities across the state, but it'll allow families to take control over their children's future and ensure that they have an education that meets their needs.
So do you support using public tax money for vouchers for parents to send their kids to private school?
Absolutely, yeah. I believe public or private, that families should choose how their kids get educated. I don't believe in an institutionalized, one-size-fits-all model.
And the way I understand it, though, that's not constitutional, the way the Idaho Constitution is written.
Well, we'll have to let the attorneys hammer that one out, but the reality is that we need to implement those kind of changes in education. Families across the state are demanding it. So if the Constitution needs to be amended, well, then let's get the process started.
Over the last few years, the legislature and the governors have pumped quite a bit more money into the education budget. Mm-hmm. Would you support that if you win, to keep increasing funding for teacher pay and technology, things like that?
Teachers would make a lot more money under a school choice model than they ever have under this broken model we have right now, because the funding is going to follow the schools, and schools that choose to compensate their teachers, and teachers could be rewarded for an entrepreneurial spirit by starting their own schools. It'll allow them to really take control of their pay. So yeah, I do believe we need to make significant investments in the rising generation. It's important, but we need to invest it in the right way.
Do you believe that critical race theory is being taught in Idaho's public schools, and why or why not?
I don't believe it, I know it. It's an absolute fact, and it's really a shame that this isn't something that gets more coverage. I'll share with you some recent examples, but Boise State University, they have a racial inventory quiz, and it asks the question, what event led to the rise of the idea of white supremacy? And according to them, they say it's the Declaration of Independence. That's a betrayal. That is not ethical or moral to teach an entire generation to hate this nation, but particularly K-12 level. I've seen with my own eyes posters that high school students created over in Bonneville County, even saying things like white people are genetically defective descendants of albino mutants. This is hateful, it's evil, it doesn't belong in our schools.
The state recently passed one of the most restrictive abortion bans in the country, banning abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy and allowing family members to sue doctors who perform abortion. It's being challenged, of course. Do you believe that was the right bill for this time?
Absolutely. This entire country, we're missing over 60 million Americans today since Roe v. Wade, and it's a real travesty. And I mean, what are we missing from science and culture and the arts? Because 60 million people never got their chance. We need to embrace the rising generation, our future potential, not terminate them before they ever get their opportunity.
Do you support any exemptions?
I don't believe abortion is an appropriate measure at all. The reality is, I understand that there are a number of members of the legislature and the like who want to ensure that there's exemptions for rape or incest specifically. In my own life, one of the people that had one of the most profound impacts on my life was actually a product of incest. And so these are tragic scenarios, but those people too, they have an incredible potential and something to offer this world. I personally like to see abortion abolished entirely. I understand that that's going to take time to get people to start to realize how we're really undercutting our own potential, our own growth as a nation. But every step in that direction to restrict it is something that I celebrate.
The legislature and the governor just approved the largest tax cut, tax relief package in the state's history. Do you think more tax cuts should be enacted next year, and what is your tax plan?
Well, and this is where it becomes a giant shell game. Again, any step in that direction, I celebrate that. But when you're getting massive injections of money from the federal government, that money all comes, it doesn't come with strings attached, it comes with chains attached. And you have bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., they don't know what bathroom to use. They want to tell us how we need to educate kids in Idaho. I think that a lot of that money, some of it we're rightfully owed, payment in lieu of taxes, for instance. But much of it is very problematic. I think it was a step in the right direction to reduce it. If I were elected governor, I would abolish the personal income tax in the state.
Just completely abolish it?
Absolutely.
How do you replace it?
Well, the first thing we need to stop doing is cutting $50 million tax deals with multinational corporations like Facebook, like our governor just did. That is completely out of control. These multinational corporations, they don't have Idaho's interests at heart. They can pay taxes, but the working class members, our retired citizens, the small and medium-sized business owners of this state, they ought to be rewarded for the fruits of their labors.
In general, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing Idaho in 2022 and going into 2023 when the new governor or the current governor will continue on?
Right now, we have a major issue with housing prices across this state. Again, our education system has developed a complete obsession with getting all the young people in the state getting into a college program and then working in an office. But people need to build roads and build homes, and if somebody enjoys turning a wrench, that's fantastic. They're creating immense value for their communities.
Humphries went on to say to address the housing crisis, he would offer more vocational training to beef up the workforce to get more skilled tradespeople out building homes to increase the supply so prices stabilize. Now, in response to his comments about Boise State University having a racial inventory quiz, Boise State sent me this statement saying, "Some training materials not currently nor recently utilized by Boise State University staff were located on pages within the university's website. Despite efforts to keep all our pages updated, some unused materials still existed on pages that had not been updated. Those training materials have now been removed. Any ideas presented in classrooms can always be debated, supported, and challenged. Universities leave a full range of ideas open to students." Coming up after the break, we'll hear Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin's stances on the issues. Welcome back. We're focusing on the race for the Republican nomination for governor in the May 17th primary. Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin of Idaho Falls describes herself as a conservative. Former President Trump has endorsed her in this race. She and her husband have 2 adult children. McGeachin served as a state representative from 2002 to 2012. We interviewed her at a business location she chose in the Boise area, not the business she talks about at the beginning of the interview when I asked why is she running for governor.
Kendrick, Idaho is the home of Hardware Brewery, where more than 2 years ago, that's where all of this started for me. When Hardware Brewery was shut down by Mr. Little, the family invited me to be with them when they decided to reopen their business. I stood with the family for their reopening. I stood with the family when law enforcement, Mr. Little's law enforcement came in and threatened to take their license away. I stood with the family when that law enforcement issued a $2,500 citation, and asking Mr. Little to please make the citation go away because they're just hardworking Idahoans trying to make a living. I've stood with them from day one, and I continue to stand with the people of Idaho, the people whose lives have been affected by the decisions of Mr. Little to shut down our businesses, tell us that we couldn't go to church and worship freely. We're losing our freedoms, our liberties, we're losing the sovereignty of our state, and we're losing our traditional conservative values are under attack. And so that's why I'm running for governor, to protect those things that we love and hold so dear here in Idaho.
I'm going to ask you to name only one, but what is your top priority?
I've come up with a vision. It's a conservative vision for a free and prosperous Idaho. It starts with getting government off our backs. We need to reduce taxation. Our people are being overtaxed right now. We've got rampant inflation because of the money that is flowing into our state. Families are struggling with inflation, they're being penalized for buying a loaf of bread at the grocery store, and it costs us twice as much to fill up our gas tank. My vision for the state of Idaho is to empower the individual. We're going to start with one idea that I have is to reopen the University of Idaho School of Mines so that we can nurture and cultivate geologists and engineers to utilize the resources that we've been blessed with here in Idaho, including rare earth minerals, to help us develop a policy to become energy independent.
What do you see as the biggest issue in Idaho public schools?
Our school system is failing our children, and it's not our teachers that are failing our kids. It's our system that's failing our kids. The statistics I have in 2021, only 39% of our children are at proficient level in math scores. Only 65% of our children are proficient in reading, and we have continued to fail to meet our go-on rate for higher education. We need to get rid of the socialist and controversial teachings in our classroom that is in our schools. Go back to the basics, teach our kids the ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s, teach them about our constitutional Republican form of government. And I'm a big proponent of skills-based training. Having served as the president of the Career Technical Education Foundation, I believe that we need to do more to help our kids develop attainable real skills.
You mentioned critical race theory. You started your education task force. Do you believe that the teaching of critical race theory is widespread in Idaho?
I do not believe that it's widespread throughout our school system in Idaho, but we know it's there. And we've seen examples of it. We had people testify to it, and I continue to receive examples of it happening in our schools. So we need to it's unconstitutional. Those teachings are unconstitutional. We're all created equal, and we all have equal rights and equal opportunities.
Do you support more funding for our public schools in terms of teacher pay, technology, et cetera?
Absolutely support the idea of giving more money to pay our teachers higher salaries and buying technology. But for taxpayers, we need to see more of a result from the money that we're spending. And I also would like to, if we're not getting the results that we as taxpayers and as citizens and that our children deserve, then we need to address that underlying problem rather than continually to just pump more money into it. I am an advocate. I do support school choice. I'm a small business woman, and in business, competition is a good thing. I think that with true school choice, that will only work to lift all boats, and all methods of teaching our children will improve.
The state recently passed one of the most restrictive abortion bans, banning abortion after 6 weeks, allowing family members to sue an abortion provider. Do you believe that was the right way to go?
Absolutely, and I actually have, since the decision of the Supreme Court
was leaked,
I put out a statement just yesterday actually calling on Governor Little to call the legislature into special session so that we can once and for all prohibit all abortions and make Idaho be the sanctuary of life, that we believe that life begins at the moment of conception.
So
and if I was the governor, I would be doing that.
Do you support any exemptions?
There are plenty of opportunities within the community. Again, always going back to the fact that life begins at the moment of conception, that with the proper care and nurture from the community, absolutely every life is worth protecting.
So not for the health of the mother or rape or incest?
Well, those are unique circumstances that have to be considered. If a woman's life is in danger, then that's separate than the protection of life at the moment of conception.
What do you see as the biggest challenge facing Idaho going forward into 2023?
Yeah, Idaho is a great state. We have so much opportunity, great resources, great people. But what's at stake is the loss of our freedoms, our liberties, the loss of the sovereignty of our state, where if we continue to take that money from the federal government that tells us how we have to teach in our classroom, how we manage our Medicaid programs, how do we build our roads. There's small communities, rural communities that are ready, they want to put traffic signals up in their community and are willing to pay for it, but we can't do it because we don't meet all the federal requirements. It's all about doing things the Idaho way and doing what's best for the people of Idaho.
Lieutenant Governor, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course.
When asked about tax relief, Lieutenant Governor McGeachin says the legislature should have given even more of the nearly $2 billion budget surplus back to the taxpayers, should have eliminated the grocery sales tax, and should have done more on property tax relief. Coming up next, the incumbent. Hear from Governor Brad Little on the issues. Once again, today we are focusing on the race for the Republican nomination for governor in the May 17th primary election. So far, we've heard from Ed Humphries and Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin. Now to the incumbent. Governor Brad Little also describes himself as a conservative Republican. He and the First Lady have 2 sons and 6 grandchildren and call the city of Emmett home. He's now running for his second term as Idaho's 33rd governor after serving as lieutenant governor from 2009 to 2018 and as a state senator for 4 terms before that. Just first of all, Governor, why are you running for a second term?
Well, we are very pleased with what we got done in the first term. Education, largest tax decrease, met our goals on transportation, but there's a lot of work, particularly on the education side, whether it be literacy or whether it be teacher pay and benefits. We put those programs out there. We know they're going to have to be adjusted going forward. And what's really important to me is that we move the ball on literacy to get all kids reading proficiently at the end of the 3rd grade, and that we create an atmosphere where our kids, our high school kids, want to be teachers in Idaho. So we'll have to keep modifying to make sure that happens.
And let's stick with the education thing, because I was going to ask you, what do you think is the biggest priority next year after where a lot of the funding went this year, allowing districts to go to optional all-day kindergarten if they choose? What's going to be the issue next year?
Well, we'll see how that worked. I was fortunate that I got the legislature to agree with me to put a lot of flexibility in there, because problems, I was in Jerome yesterday and they have a great dual language immersion program, which is really great for Jerome, but it's different in other areas. So we want to see the creativity of school districts, and we're just about ready to go live with our dashboard to where everybody will be able to see what kind of progress we're making on literacy. We get that longitudinal data back, then we'll be able to help teachers and districts move the ball on literacy.
So it's still literacy?
Oh yeah.
And teacher pay?
Well, we spend half our money on education. If kids aren't reading, we're not doing our job.
Overall, and you can just pick one thing, what is your top priority?
Well, that's literacy is really it, because for every dollar state tax you pay, half of it goes into K-12. And if these kids aren't reading, we're just, and we continue to lighten the regulatory load on small businesses in the state, and that's where a lot of our economic explosion is coming from, is a regulatory difference between us and almost every other, well, actually every other state. And so I was with a group of new businesses 2 nights ago, and they were all talking about how great it is to do business in Idaho.
Staying with education for one more question, do you believe critical race theory is being taught in Idaho public schools?
Well, the debate on the floor, I signed the first critical race theory bill in the United States, but the debate on the floor was, we're worried about it coming from other states, but there's really no evidence of it in Idaho. But we do that in Idaho, for better or worse. We, what I say, call blocking legislation. You see something happening in Seattle or Portland or California, and we put in blocking legislation. And for the most part, that bill was blocking legislation, and even the sponsors of it admitted that.
And so you've seen no evidence, or no one has presented evidence to you that there are specific examples?
No, but
here.
we still want to be cognizant of it. So.
Of course, as you know, the state recently passed one of the most restrictive abortion bans in the country, banning abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy, and also allowing for family members to sue a doctor who performs an abortion. You signed it into law, but you also raised some very serious concerns about it, and particularly the enforcement mechanism. Do you have any second thoughts about signing that bill now that it's being challenged?
I mean, I literally have three choices. I can sign a bill and say nothing. I can veto a bill, or I can sign it and say, I see some fundamental problems there that we need to address next year or sometime. And of course, there's going to be a big decision from the Supreme Court, probably the end of June or July, and then it's going to be a whole different. It's probably going to be a whole different set of circumstances for what we do to protect life, and so that has been stayed here in Idaho, and we'll wait and see what happens at the federal level, and I'm sure we'll have to do something next year.
And you know, the nearby states are even ramping up for the women here who may cross state lines to get abortions. Does that concern you at all, that
Yes.
the bill may be too restrictive?
Yeah, it does, and you know, because our goal is just to basically protect life, whether it be here or whether it be in another state. But we're going to have much more clarity when the Supreme Court decides this decision.
The U.S. Supreme Court. Yep. Also, of course, as you know, you proposed and the legislature signed the largest tax cut in state history.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Of course. But I want to know, are you going to do even more of that next year, or is it going to depend on the economic situation as we see with inflation right now?
We did two things. We did ongoing tax relief. We did some property tax relief. We did payroll tax relief, and then we did the rebate. And for the second year in a row, we did the rebate because we don't know what normal is. There was $6 trillion worth of stimulus put into the economy by the federal government, and we know some of our revenue is a result of that $6 trillion. Idaho and other states. What Idaho's doing that most other states aren't doing is we're not spending all that money. We're paying off debt. We're putting away money for a rainy day fund. We're rebating it to the taxpayers. We are investing it in transportation, education, and other areas, but we want to see what normal is. And if we see what normal is, we'll probably continue to adjust taxes.
What do you do about managing rapid growth in Idaho and the soaring housing prices?
Well, let me kind of split your question. Rapid growth is best decided by your county commissioner, your city, your local community. Because some communities, and that's their prerogative, don't want to grow. And you know, when you elect your county commissioner, your city council, that's part of our local government system. But what we're doing to help them with growth and to help with housing affordability is we're putting a lot of money into sewer, water, roads, broadband, schools, teacher pay, teacher insurance. Those are all often property tax. So if the state's paying for it, there should be less property tax and there should be more houses available.
What do you see as the biggest challenge facing Idaho?
Growth. Just how does the state, how do our schools, how do our universities, how do our counties, how do our roads cope with growth?
And while the governor calls growth the greatest challenge facing Idaho, he also calls growth the greatest opportunity for Idaho because it could lead to higher incomes and more jobs. These interviews were edited for equal time and to fit the time constraints of this show. You can watch the full interviews with the candidates in this Viewpoint story on KTVB.com. There are dozens of key races in the May 17th primary election. For more on what you can expect on your ballot, text the word VOTE to 208-321-5614. Just the word vote. You don't need the quotation marks. We'll send you a link to our Idaho Primary Election Voter Guide. The guide also includes info on voter registration, polling locations, absentee ballots, and party affiliation. So once again, just text VOTE for our Primary Election Voter Guide to 208-321-5614. That is all of our time. Thank you so much for watching this special Decision 2022 edition of Viewpoint.